And so today, and I don't know how much, anyone had a chance to really look through all of the different project scoring results, but I wanted to talk about that, talk about the process for selecting priority projects, if there's any other changes to the list, and if there's any thoughts on how the scoring actually worked out. So I'm going to switch screens. And I did not put these in any particular order, just knowing that, let's see, I have way too many things open apparently. Just knowing that the scores would end up changing once we applied those local priority scores and went through all of the expected life cycle changes. Okay, let's see. Okay, there, just took a minute to open. So did anyone have any comments initially on the scores?
Tasha, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have my microphone down, right? So if Zeke were here, he'd say, yeah, sounds about right. Just a general question on the ones that are broken out into segments. Sometimes it seems like none of the segments score as high as the overall quarter does.
So
why does that happen? Yeah.
Dave, do you want to go ahead and address that?
Yeah, the overall corridor score takes the highest score of any of the segments on any of those attributes. So that's why it's higher. It's because, not all of the segments have that high score or anything like that. That's kind of why we broke it out, because the way the project was submitted was all of Glenstone from I-44 to James River Freeway. And if we were going to score it like that, we'd just take the highest value of whatever variable at whatever place it occurs and attribute that to the whole corridor. So now we break it down and you can see how each segment scores. And this is where the parts aren't as great as the whole, so to speak. Does that make any sense, Frank?
Yeah, so basically the whole quarter is picking out the worst or best or whatever, how you want to view it. Set right. Piece of each one, and then it's contributing to overall score. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I think it's probably more important to then focus on those individual segments. So if you have any comments on how those are broken up, if we need to make them smaller, if something seems like it would be more likely to be constructed from here to here instead of from there to there, let us know and we can adjust that and the scoring accordingly. I did want to point out, and we always knew that a few of these just would not make a huge difference, but for a few projects. So the railroad crossing, for example, that really, I think, only ended up impacting 2 projects. So MM and ZZ, which included the railroad overpass. And so that's also it's really kind of the same, that portion of the project is the same railroad overpass actually. So there's that one. And then bridge condition, those, more than one project probably included bridges, just a handful actually ended up kind of being impacted by the project. If you see in these subtotals where it says NA, those are projects that weren't scored either because they're new alignments, there's no data, or they're kind of area wide. And so, you know, those are just ones that we'll have to know that they don't have a score, and we can talk about them separately when we go to kind of decide what belongs on the constrained project list. I will admit I was surprised at how many projects actually ended up getting the full bike ped score, you know, but they're kind of on those major corridors. So, you know, a lot of places still fell within those smaller points, those, you know, 0, 5, or 10, but definitely along some of our major corridors, we have some bicycle and pedestrian crash issues. And I'm going to guess the majority of them are actually pedestrian. Dave, did you get a feel for the percentage or the ratio there?
Whether or not it was a bicycle or a pedestrian?
Yeah, or did you not look that?
I didn't look at that. I just selected both and then added those up. I think it would probably, since I just admitted I don't know what's going on, take this at face value, but I think that the majority are pedestrian crashes. So I'd say at least 75%. So that's probably not true, but that's what I think.
Yeah, and then I also want to point out that on the EJ, switching to that hex bin format really did kind of distribute those points around the region, I think a little bit better than how we had that before. Any other comments or suggestions for adjustments at this point in time, kind of before we finish going through all of the other projects?
Tasha, I just want to offer, I was not surprised to see Glenstone score high. And that's kind of like when I was talking about when we value safety, yeah, safety is number one, but Glenstone's always going to score high when we do that. And, you know, we have a project in the works to help that situation somewhat, but I think there is not a financially or politically viable project that can ever make that quarter score low in this process. I think we can continue working on it and we'll always score high.
Well, there are a lot of people on Glenstone every day, so it's definitely a factor. And that is one of the things, you know, with some of these, especially breaking it down into segments. I mean, we know safety and operational improvements, but we really, you know, some of these are still scoring just needs and not necessarily a solution. Any other thoughts on kind of just the initial set of results? I know this is, you know, kind of a deviation from how the STIP scoring was done. We did make some adjustments on both the points and the categories, since this is a, you know, more of a long range plan as opposed to something we're looking at for immediate programming. But anyway, I'm glad there were no major surprises then in those results. On the local priority, we're going to, you know, kind of confirm that we've got the list that we need from everybody on projects, that we're not missing anything. I'd much rather be more diligent now than have to amend the plan later. We will send out a list of all the projects, and the communities can select the ones that they consider to be a local priority for them. You can choose 2 projects, and that will add 15 points to your score. And then on the life cycle, staff, we're going to go through and you know, determine if a project will basically replace something that isn't existent. So for example, this I-44 interchange improvements at Kansas Expressway includes interchange improvements and replacing the bridge. that would extend the life cycle of that bridge. And so basically something that might, be a maintenance need becomes improved as part of the project. So we will go through and apply those points, and everyone will have a chance to review that as well. So those will be kind of the last 3 things that we need to do. Make sure we have all the projects we need, score those 2 categories. And our next meeting is May 27th. And so we can go through and, kind of start, we'll make sure we have costs on everything too. And we can start going through and deciding what belongs as part of the constrained project list. Let's see, so does anyone have any questions on, I guess, any of that? We can definitely have a conversation or make any changes that we need to now. I'd rather do it as part of the meeting if we can.
Natasha, are you going to go over the segment breakouts as a separate agenda item?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that now. So let's just start with Glenstone. So, this section from I-44 to Kearney, and that's actually kind of how we broke up. Yeah, so we don't go north of I-44 on that one. The project submitted was from I-44. Frank, do you think there's a reason to go north of I-44?
There could be, and don't know what the city and county folks think. We've had some growth in that part of town, I think, and we could potentially have a need for something.
Okay. I guess we have the county. Joel, do you have any thoughts on including a segment north of I-44? I know it's still kind of city.
I'm sorry, I was distracted there for a second. What segment are you talking about?
Oh, so for Glenstone, do you foresee a need to include a segment north of I-44? I know it's still kind of more in the city than in the county.
Yeah, it doesn't come into the county until you get north of Valley Watermill.
Okay.
So, and even that whole intersection now is pretty much inside the city. So I don't know that we need to add anything in the county.
Okay. Well, maybe we just add a segment then that starts at Valley Watermill and goes to I-44.
I think that's the idea. That way, if it's scoring as high as the rest of it, we know we need to keep that on the radar.
And if it doesn't score, it just goes to the unconstrained list, and we can do that. So then we go 44 to Kearney, and we don't do really any of the more minor. I think in the prior plan, we had a lot of intersection projects at Glenstone and Cherry, Glenstone and Bennett, Glenstone and Grand. I can't remember what, maybe Commercial. There was kind of every intersection through there. Whereas this is a little bit broader, Kearney to Division, to Chestnut, to Grand, to Sunshine, to Battlefield, to James River Freeway. Frank, did you want to see those intersections in there as a separate project?
No, I think this is fine. I don't can't think of an intersection unless, and given how it's city here, at one point they went to look specifically at Pythian, but I don't see a need to do anything individually.
Okay.
And just one additional comment about those segments. Those are broken out on where MoDOT breaks out the state of the system segments. So all the variables are going to be the same in those areas, but those are different for each one of those segments. That's how the road's broken up in the GIS files.
So really, even if we broke these into smaller, if we split this one in half, it would be the same score, is what you're saying. Like
that's true.
Okay. So we do have already submitted as segments I-44 capacity improvements. So that kind of gets us through portions. And then we have the remaining broken out into segments.
Tasha, I thought it looked okay, except on the east side, maybe 65 to 125. And then if you want a segment from 125 to OTO boundary, but we would realistically probably want to take that to Northview in Webster County if we were doing another segment beyond
so that would be a split project then.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking you probably want to look at 65 to 125, and then I don't know if you even want to look east of there or not. It's okay either way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say safety and operational, but it's generally, I mean, the thought would be 6 laning. And do you really foresee any 6 laning happening between Northview and 125?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, if we did, you're probably going to add something at Northview, and we don't have a lot of entering traffic at Northview.
No, okay. I'm just going to make some notes and then we'll go back in and clean that up. So we do have a specific interchange project at Kansas. Okay, so then James River Freeway, a lot's already in progress. So that's great. But then this includes I-44 to 413. And then 413 to Kansas Expressway. So it's kind of those remaining segments to the west.
I propose we split that second segment, but at West Bypass. So have a 413 to West Bypass and West Bypass to Kansas. Driving that seems like there's a difference in experience in those two segments, and then just how we have to piecemeal everything to actually do anything on our freeways. I'd be curious to know if other people kind of feel the same way about that.
Frank, I agree with you.
Okay, so then for Kansas Expressway, we actually do start north of I-44, but it's included in this whole segment to go from Norton Road to Kearney. And that's another one that did actually score pretty high so far in the results. And then it goes to Division, to Chestnut, to Grand, to Sunshine, to Battlefield, and James River Freeway. And I'm gonna take Dave's, you know, I think it's the same thing where these are where the MoDOT, this is where the MoDOT information separates.
This is Sarah. I think we might need to add a segment Norton to, I don't know what that northern boundary would be. Maybe Farm Road 94, maybe our boundary.
Is it WW or something like that?
O or OO.
Okay, so basically OTO northern boundary to Norton.
Yeah, that probably works.
Okay. South of James River Freeway, do we want to take that to Republic Road in any way? Do we even know what that would look like with the new road coming in? Adam, do you have any thoughts on how all that's going to tie together?
Well, we'll be adding some turn lanes, and I mean everything at the intersection today at Republic Road. That footprint gets widened a little bit, but as far as anything north of that, no, that's nothing that's contemplated in in our project. So maybe there's a need to look at, I don't know what the improvements would be between James River Freeway and Republic Road, but I guess it could be scored independently to see if there's a need in that section.
Okay. So then Kearney, it does have a pretty big segment here. Kansas Expressway to Glenstone. I don't know. These are kind of two pretty large segments, actually. Frank, with what you guys have looked at regarding Kearney, and I guess if we're talking safety and operational improvements, those would be some pretty large segments to look at.
Yeah, I think they're fine because we're not necessarily talking about a bunch of widening, but more spot improvements along those locations. The only thing I'm wondering about is something maybe from LeCompte to Mulroy. But with Pick East being basically built out,
yeah,
I don't know. There's some stuff happening in Mulroy potentially.
Hey, Natasha.
Yeah.
This is Adam again. And just one other thought before we move on from the Kansas corridor.
Sure.
On the north end, that segment with Norton Road to Kearney, I guess my only question is, are we double counting that section since we've got the other project in there for the interchange improvements? Like, as far as when we look to create a constrained project list, are the costs of those segments going to be double counted in the evaluation of those projects?
Oh, so I see what you mean. Like, so when we do the cost and we move those projects up,
yeah,
we can look at that, and we can even, you know, and of course in the scoring, even just right off the bat, the interchange itself doesn't score as high, but then it would become part of that project. So we can just kind of be sure to watch for that, or we could also exclude the interchange, but then that might, you know, kind of mess with some things.
I think that interchange is on this list. Can you look and see how that scored?
Yeah, so it's up here. It's this number 8, and it scored 60.
I would suspect the reason why that segment scores high is because of everything happening south of Evergreen.
Yeah. So we could always split this to be more, because I think that Norton, whatever we do with that's probably going to all have to be part of that interchange project. Sarah, you've been looking at this more recently. How do you think we should maybe break that out?
Sorry, I gotta find my mute. I don't think it really matters as long as we just have everything covered, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have to show it's in the long range plan, and then we'll talk about an improvement when we get to the tip specifically.
So probably as long as we just say Norton Road to Kearney, that would include that project. Okay.
I think there's like a 20-point difference between that interchange and the Norton to Kearney segment, and that's the bike ped score. We've got the pedestrian bicycle crashes on that segment on Kearney are not being attributed to the interchange improvements at Kansas. So there weren't any bicycle pedestrian accidents on the ramps or the bridge across I-44 for that interchange. But on that segment, apparently, Norton Road to Kearney, most of those are on Kearney. And a lot of the bike ped accidents were in the northern part on Kearney, Kansas, Glenstone. where the kind of the homeless camps were and stuff like that. So those got a big score there in those areas.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Adam. And maybe we just kind of make sure we just know it's included as part of that segment.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Are there any other thoughts on Kearney itself? Okay. So for Route 160, this is going south from Springfield. So from Plainview Road to South Street and Nixa, which is just south of 14. So we really ended up breaking it from Plainview to CC, CC to 14, and then 14 all the way down to the OTO boundary. So really taking it just a little further than south, going ahead and going to the boundary. Any thoughts on those divisions, or if there's any spots in particular that we want to make sure we mention?
Yeah, Sarah, or Natasha, this is Jeff. I don't know. A lot of the intersections have been done from CC to 14, but I think there's a couple still yet maybe that could be looked at, whether that's for pedestrian crossings or whatnot, but at least something to take a look at, Aldersgate, or I think that's basically the only one that's left, but maybe mention something about intersection improvements, or at least scoping for that.
Okay.
In that CC to 14 section.
Yeah, and I think the original project was submitted as capacity improvements, but improving those intersections will just help facilitate that. So, okay. So then on West Bypass, these were
Natasha,
just,
back on
yeah.
the 160, sorry.
Sure.
I think if you guys are estimating with the assumption that you're 6-laning that, we need to think about how we go from 6 lanes to 2 lanes outside of OTO. We are working with SimCog on trying to look at maybe passing lanes in rural Christian and Stone counties, but I think we need to think about how does it go from that to a 4-lane to a 6-lane, if that's what you're estimating, is assuming.
I'm wondering if we would drop the 6 lanes at 14. I guess that's maybe, Jeff, you might have a thought about future growth and if that might be the place to do it. And then you'd have maybe 4 lanes from 14 to the OTO boundary and then 2 lanes.
I definitely see some potential for growth on the south side from South Street south. A couple of different projects that are in the works in that area right now. So I think that would be adequate, with the 6 lanes to 4 lanes south of South Street, and then just determine where to go back into 2-lane.
Where are the OTO boundaries currently?
Like Riverdale, Rosedale, one of the, like somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's almost Riverdale. And that's the Finley. And is Nixa able to sewer basically down the Finley? Is that essentially your growth boundary?
I think right now sewer capacity, Kelby Creek is our treatment plant will handle everything. It would just be the addition of lift stations. The current lift station at Kelby Creek is the furthest one south, and it is almost at capacity.
I was trying to remember. I think actually doesn't Highlandville have the highway up to Finley almost?
I don't remember, Frank.
I think what I'm thinking is that basically I think you're going to start the Nixa growth at Riverdale, the river, and maybe that's where the 4-lane starts, and then the passing lanes are 2 lanes south of the river. And that's almost the OTO boundary. So yeah, it's probably good the way it is.
Okay. And then, something to keep in mind too is we'll still be splitting things between a constrained and unconstrained list. And then we'll also be looking at different timeframes for projects to be done too. So, for example, if this is one where we think the growth is going to happen later, we can just, kind of put it later into the program also. Anything else on 160? Okay, so for the West Bypass intersection improvements, this was just intersection improvements from I-44 to 60. So looks like Dave just broke out all the individual intersections.
Hoping we'll get Kearney addressed very soon for a while.
Yeah, okay. So do you think we should even include it, knowing that it's a program project on the tip?
I would say exclude it. I mean, it may come back in another plan in the future, but we do have a project coming. If anybody wants to keep it, that's fine.
Frank, Natasha, is there any, just keeping it on the list, does that hurt us at all? Even though you know the plan and everything, would it be difficult to re-add it later if we take it off today? And if it's no harm either way, I would be more in favor of leaving it on there.
Okay. I don't guess it really matters. We probably would just put it on the unconstrained list and would just live out, it stays there. So just when we do go to decide what a cost would be for this, because that unconstrained list becomes kind of our unfunded needs list, we just want to kind of be aware of what improvements we would be costing for that. So we'll just have to kind of think about that and make sure, we're not including the project that's on there today. Anything else? Is there, would you want to have the interchange on there, Frank?
The one at 44, the one at James River?
I guess either, actually.
I have not heard of a need for either of those. Now that you bring it up, though, I do
said
wonder.
Something about the I-44 interchange the other day. I can't remember. I don't know if it was when I was talking with Sarah. Somebody was saying.
So it always shows up on our bottleneck list, somewhere between Kearney and 44. And I think it's just something about that maneuver being slow, and so it pops it up. I don't know that means there's a true bottleneck. Dave, have you seen anything pop up with bypass and 44? Like when we've done the CMP or any of those things?
No. I know what you're talking about, and I think that bottleneck there may be attributable to some signal timing or something like that, and a short length between the control devices at Kearney and I-44. But other than that, I haven't seen anything on the other side of that ramp, or the ramps, or the bridge going into Willard, apart from the capacity change with the 4-laning. But that was already done till about, quarter of a mile past the interchange anyway.
Okay.
So no, I haven't.
Okay. Well, unless you guys think there's a real need, we'll just leave it at the actual intersections instead of the interchanges.
I was wondering at the James River Freeway if we're to the point of seeing a need for DDI there yet or something else.
All right, well, why don't we pop it in there and then we can just kind of see.
The thing about both of those, we don't have like outer roads or adjacent signals just right on them, except you kind of have Kearney and bypass right there, but otherwise they have at least some decent spacing, room to breathe, if you will, in both those cases.
Well, and at the end of the day too, we also have projects on this list that are looking more at the highways than at West Bypass, but I-44 going through there and then James River going through there. So at least it wouldn't be fully neglected. So then let's see, these were already submitted. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm the only one talking, but a quick question on West Bypass and 146. Yeah. Is that the one that goes to Wilson Rutledge?
Yes. Adam, is that the one that you guys had submitted for the cost share and then it didn't meet signal warrants or something like that?
Which one did you say again?
Farm Road 146.
At West Bypass?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it probably meets signal warrants, like several of those along there. It just, it's one that we foresee a need eventually probably to see signalization occur. But yeah, that's the one where we're going to tie our improvements into, where we're widening.
And is it Bennett on the other side? And that's not very, it's kind of a narrow stretch, right?
Yeah, as you go on east of it, you're saying? Yeah, it's pretty, there's going to have to be widening done for sure on that east side.
I just want to make sure we got that on the list. I can remember the number.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Let's see, so 60 already has, in addition to the James River, this is now more kind of east and west of James River. So go back and forth here a little bit. So we've got some out for Republic. And then out east, so 65 to NN and J, and then from there to Farm Road 243. So are there any other, let's see, let's do west first. So MMM to 360, and then kind of through that 194 to west in Republic. Are there any other segments in there that we're missing? There might be something else that pops up. Yeah, so we have 60 in Maine, 60 through Republic. Seems like those were submitted in some good segment sizes to begin with. Garrett, anything else for 60 through Republic that you can see?
No, I think you guys have pretty well got it there.
Okay. So then going east, we have NN and J to Farm Road 223, and 65 to NN and J. And the 60 and 125 interchange will have some improvements. We did add a project for the interchange at Farm Road 189 as well. So anything else you see on 60 East? And at this point, I think we assume that anything considered a freeway improvement out there, interchanges and whatnot, would also include outer roads and whatever connections need to be made that way. Okay, so then these were already submitted, broken out, but 65 at Kearney, and then CC to 14 and 14 to F. And I think these two from CC to F are kind of those last capacity improvements we have to make. Is there anything that we want to include? I don't remember seeing anything north of Kearney. Dave, did we have anything that covered like Bluegrass Road or anything else further north?
Nothing north of that Kearney.
Frank, do you guys see that being anything that comes up?
Seems like something's coming up in the safety plan on one of those intersections up there, but it's not elevating to the level of needing interchange.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was Bluegrass or one of the roads north of there.
I know we've gotten some public comment on Bluegrass. I know A is another one that's.
I think those are on the STIP priorities list.
Okay.
I get a little confused with these lists now because they're just so massive, but.
Yeah, they're getting too large.
Well, let's just make a note then to check on north of I-44, check on those intersections.
I think our safety plan, we'll put it on the radar if there's just a safety concern, but I think what we want to capture here is if there's a traffic concern or economic development issue that we're trying to address. And since Springfield's kind of directing growth away from that area, probably not.
Okay.
But other folks here may know something, especially county, that we need to keep in mind.
But if it does pop up on safety, then we want to make sure that we at least have maybe a way to address it through the plan. So we'll keep that in mind. Okay.
And it doesn't look like, we had a discussion the other day about the flyover ramp taper coming in from 60 eastbound to northbound 65. So it doesn't really look like we've got a segment in here that would actually cover that concern. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the right format, but I want to make sure if we do want to capture it.
So that 60 to 65 interchange.
Yeah, specifically that flyover ramp is like the last one we have left that doesn't have adequate merge capacity. We've got yield signs up actually, which is a bad sign.
And that's really for where the flyover meets 65.
Going northbound, yep.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that is too short of a merge distance.
One of those things that we never seem to find the right project to include it in.
Okay. Yeah, so if anything else, while we just talk through these, if anything else pops up like that, let's just make sure we capture it. Okay, so then that's kind of what we have for 65. CC was already kind of broken out. Fremont to 65. The extension.
Natasha,
yeah.
I'd be curious in Nixa and Christian County. We went through and made some improvements between Cheyenne and Fremont, but not widened. And so I didn't know if there was like a phasing needed where you dealt with the alignment from, say, Maine to Cheyenne first, and then went back through and then widened everything. Or we need, basically, do we need to split it at Cheyenne too, or if we just want to handle it as one big segment?
Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, I can see where you could break that up from Maine to Cheyenne, and then that improved section from Cheyenne going toward Ozark, you know, to Fremont. I mean, I think with the signal there and everything, I don't know what other improvements would need to be made there.
Okay, well, we can look.
Yeah, I definitely think that, from Nix's standpoint, if we can just kind of match what we have for what MoDOT has at CC and Cheyenne right now, I think that would be a great improvement. So.
Okay. And then, yeah, I guess, so we have these kind of CC projects and then this broken out. So we can, yeah, look at how all that gets split. Okay. So for AB 266 and B, this was for intersection improvements. And so Dave listed the various intersections through there. Frank or Adam, I know we kind of adjusted that alignment on the major thoroughfare plan, but any other thoughts?
Nothing else from my end.
I think Independence is the outer road, isn't it? I-44 outer road.
That's correct.
I think we will address that as part of the interchange.
As part of this project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because every time we talk about that road, outer road.
I just going the extra mile for you, Frank. You know, doing more rather than doing less.
That.
Is I realize this is not an intersection, but is AB the route that we have that has the railroad crossing? You come over the top of the hill and people are just sitting there at the railroad crossing?
That railroad runs out of Springfield, goes up by the airport. So would that be near Willard or something? I don't remember.
Yeah, I was thinking the AB cut between 266 and Willard, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a railroad crossing there that, in my mind, is probably more dangerous than any of those intersections. But just having driven it last year, I haven't driven it in a while.
So it looks like it's just south of Farm Road 124 and north of 266.
Hey, Natasha.
Mm-hmm.
I drive that every day, pretty much from Republic to Willard.
Okay.
The railroad itself isn't too bad. The problem is the cars that get backed up. And Beth's right. You can get to where you come up over a hill and there's cars stopped right in front of you.
So if there's a train actively crossing and then it kind of creates a blind stop, basically.
Yeah, it can. And that's a situation where trains have been stopped before. They don't stop a ton there, but there is a crossing or whatever they do where they there's two tracks and one can be stopped as another one passes, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, siding. The sidings they will park on.
Okay. And is that like going northbound? Okay. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, it'd be northbound.
So maybe, okay, yeah, we don't really have that listed necessarily as an intersection, but gosh, that seems like something that could be addressed, well, I guess you still have connectivity, whatever, but some sort of signage when there's an active train.
It would need to be some type of interactive system.
Yeah.
Sometimes those interactive systems are cheap and sometimes they are very expensive depending on where you have to hook it into the rail system because it has to connect to the rail system. And I've run into them where we were going to do them for a pedestrian crossing and they were over $1 million just to get the interaction.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's just put that on there. And make that kind of a specific improvement. Okay, anything else on AB? Okay.
Sorry, Natasha. Do we have anybody from Willard on the meeting? If not, I'm wondering if we need to be thinking about a short. Anything up in Willard itself, they've had some growth, and we've got like the state routes picked out in Farm Road 94, but like New Melville intersection there.
Yeah, they did submit some projects. So they submit like Miller to New Melville, New Melville to Hughes. So they submit some Miller stuff, some Hughes Road. Looks like it got a little out of order on that, but so if there's some additional projects you think that.
Yeah, I think maybe the AB in New Melville, which is Farm Road 84. I know we've had some development proposals up there, and New Melville is basically going to act like a backage road to some extent. And then there's also I don't know what they call it. I guess what's really the outer road up there, but.
I think they had a project that was sidewalks just north of AB in New Melville that went east back down New Melville to John F. Kennedy, and that was a sidewalk.
Okay, so just sidewalks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I could see almost a need for 3-laning or a bunch of turn lanes from 160 to kind of through their core area up there. It's probably more of a vision list, but I think as they get more growth, like they're saying, it's going to become more of an issue for them.
Okay. So then, let's see. I already talked a little bit more about 60. So then the east-west arterial was already submitted, broken out, and then Springfield added to the list more recently to do, is it Kissick to Southview, I think, yeah. So I think that pretty much covers the east-west arterial segments.
Do you have the section around Battlefield in there anywhere? Around FF?
Let's see, it'll be something not scored.
Kissick to South.
I don't know that we do.
Okay.
There was one Battlefield project was intersection improvements at Republic on FF. And I think the description was various intersection improvements. So they may be thinking about the whole corridor of FF going through Battlefield, but that was specified as Republic and FF.
I guess we'll just say Kansas. Let's take it west to west or to FF. So that'll be one. So then we do have Kansas Expressway in here. I know we've got that somewhat in the tip already, but probably good just to make sure we keep track of those projects. Adam, do you want to put a bridge over the river there?
I'll pass on that right now.
Okay.
Thanks, though.
Yeah.
So the tip has the 3-laning of that. Do you want to add in separate for 5-laning yet, or just wait and see?
Oh, capacity improvements along the new extension?
Yeah.
Adam, what do you think, or Rick? Or
Adam probably doesn't want to go back to that quarter ever again.
Surprised not 8 lanes just to start.
Let's see, this is a 2045 plan. I know back when we did the traffic modeling, but it's been a little while now, you know, the model showed based on current growth estimates that the The additional lanes probably wouldn't be warranted for like 15 to 20 years, something like that. So we'd be close to getting out to that 2045 period before we really think that maybe we'd need those. But I don't know. It has been a few years since that was done. So,
well, maybe that's something we can, I don't know if we'll remember to, but we can revisit in 5 years with the next plan.
Yeah, get some actual traffic volumes on it when it's open.
Yeah, it sure be easier to make some projections once we see. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't it be nice to see traffic on there?
Start there, right?
Let's start there.
Okay. So then this one is a new intersection at West Bypass and Seminole. So we've got some other intersection improvements. I think that's the bulk of where we had to suggest segmentation. So then beyond that, yeah, it's just kind of individual projects.
I assume item 59 is Route 14 at W.
Yeah, Dave, where did you assume that was?
No, that is.
Okay.
That's 14. I think that shows up a couple times.
Okay. Any other thoughts or projects that kind of pop into your head?
Number 77, that's Selmore Interchange. That's not an OTO. So I don't know if you want to put in the plan or not.
That's again, Frank, that's me going the extra mile above and beyond.
Okay.
They submitted a couple that weren't in the OTO, and I did them anyway. I think
one's not scored anyhow. So
yeah.
Well, I just didn't. If that came from Christian County, I encourage them to submit that to SimCog. Make sure we get on that list.
It's probably Ozark would be my guess.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, we probably don't need to try to put that on a constrained list anyhow.
But SimCog's been talking about 65 and really looking at the expressway section and adding interchanges, but this kind of fits into that concept of how we deal with access between Ozark and Branson.
Okay.
So that was the school that requested that, Ozark Schools, because of their future south side location. So Frank, we'll let them know that and then have them reach out to SimCog.
Yeah, there's a really decent chance that by the time anything like that could happen, it would be an OTO, but just kind of want to keep it going through the right channels.
I gotcha. We'll do it.
Oh, that Ozark has annexed area outside of the OTO on the south side somewhere too. So
yeah, that makes sense. I know the school's been looking at that area as a future location, and they've asked me about an interchange there.
Okay, so then just to point out some of the things that came up that were area-wide, signal replacements, ADA maintenance, bridge asset management, safety improvement program, interstate major routes pavement program. And so we will include in the plan a carve out for maintenance and operations. And then unless there's some reason we get told we can't, I think we'll do like we did last time with some programmatic sections for safety, bridge, bike ped. We will take the recommendations from the regional trail plan should the board adopt that, and kind of make sure we show a separate investment plan for that as well as we go into whatever this constraint list looks like. And with the passage of the fuel tax, as long as the governor signs it, which all indications are that he will, we will probably want to revisit some of our funding projections as well. Frank, I guess before we move on to that, are there any other comments on the scores or the projects or anything else related to that part of the process?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly talk about the bridge asset management, safety, and resurfacing, because that's really like a third, well, probably more like a third now to a quarter with new money coming in. The OTO tip, and so I know, and Brittany's on the line, so I'd like her to chime in on this. So we don't want to. We have to be more specific for the first 10 years. We know that that's been a push from Federal Highway. We don't want to. Even though we kind of have all this laid out, we don't want to have to put in the plan, okay, we're going to resurface I-44 from here to here in 2028 and resurface Glenstone from there to there in 2026. We'd rather have it be maybe not that specific in the MTP, but I am not sure we can just say maintenance and operations and throw them all in one big bucket either. That's why I give it to you in this breakout, but I don't know if Brittany has any thoughts on that. So we would have a bridge program, an interstate resurfacing program, minor routes resurfacing, ITS, but we wouldn't be location specific.
Well, and if you have a thought of how much that funding would be each year, we will need that specifically by each year for the first 10 years. And the TIP's already covering the first 5. So really, or 4, but we'll really then have to say for the next 6 years, we anticipate $1 million here and $2 million there or whatever.
Yeah, and what I did was, I think I've given you asset management plan averages anyway, but you can use that as 2026 and then add 3% for inflation.
Yeah.
And I base the lane miles on the expansion projects program than the draft tip.
Okay.
So I guess the other thing might be is that I can't give you right now is like if you say, okay, we're going to widen 44, then maybe we need to figure out a way, and this gets, I don't want to make it too complicated, but can we increase the asset management plan to account for the system size increasing as we put projects in? But I don't know what projects we're putting in yet to know what that is.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and then those new facilities, that'll kind of, would that be part of what needs to be, maintained sooner versus later, or, those would be questions to answer too.
And I guess, we don't necessarily have to put, like if we have new lanes on 44, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be back in 7 years. If usually the initial payment's better, and especially if it goes concrete, we don't even know that yet. So that might be.
Depends on if you touch the existing lanes when you do the new lanes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we might just want to kind of get our list of what we're expanding and then maybe revisit it and see if what we think would be appropriate. Because I don't want to overthink it, especially when we update the plan every 5 years.
And we'll be there before we actually do those things. Okay.
But I don't want to ignore the fact that it's going to, as we expand the system, it's going to cost more to maintain it. I don't want to ignore it either. So.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely keep those things in mind as we're mapping out kind of how to break up those future years.
What we might do is, I'm just kind of thinking aloud, as we identify some of the priorities that we might look at putting in the constraint plan, is identifying some kind of asset management cost for them, and then add that into to the appropriate bucket.
Okay. Okay, so is there anything else, or any comments on how MoDOT's wanting to show those projects? Okay. So briefly, Frank, have you guys seen any projections or what kind of impact we will see from the fuel tax. And I know it's going to slowly ramp in, so we won't, you know, see that next, you know, all 12.5 cents next year. But
I have not. I don't know if anybody else from MoDOT has seen anything, but I have not seen anything even that would show kind of how it would equate to what we had the program in OTO.
Wait until it passed first, right?
Yeah, and I think we'll almost have to wait to get our targets next year to, you know, if it passes, to kind of know how that's going to work.
Sarah, I know you've been playing with some projections. Do you have any thoughts on what that means?
All right, big disclaimer, because I'm making lots of assumptions that could or could not be true, but I think that in year 5, that is about $21 million. Year 1 is only about $4 million.
And that's making some assumptions on what percentage of people actually seek their rebates. And then obviously, you know, if there's other growth or not growth in the amount of fuel people buy.
Right, and then our population, employment, and VMT relative to other people, other parts of the state. So it's, you know, highly variable.
Okay, but I think it's definitely at least worth adding to our funding projections, knowing that there will be some influx of funding, and so we'll have to revisit those as well. But
and they'll have to cover engineering costs, and there's probably going to need to be some adjustments to operations too.
Yeah,
because we can cover the asset management side in OTO, but our operations side of the house is very different and struggling to meet all of its commitments. There's not an urban-rural split there.
Okay. Okay, so really that's what I had to talk about today. Thank you for reviewing all those project splits. So at the next meeting, we'll have this list all firmed up with some projections, and we can kind of start talking about you know, what that looks like in terms of a constrained and unconstrained list. We may not get that finalized by the next meeting, but we can at least start to have that conversation. And then in the meantime, I will be in touch regarding those local priority projects. So kind of knowing what's on the list today, start thinking, or maybe you already know exactly which 2 your community wants to pick, but we'll be reaching out specifically for those. And once we get kind of these revised projects all in there too, we'll send that back out for additional review. So you'll probably be hearing and seeing emails from me a lot over the next couple weeks. Anything else? And John, also, I'll go ahead and bring this up too. I was going to have give Mary a chance for you guys to review where trail projects would be impacted by any of these roadway projects. So we can make a note that those accommodations should be included when we go to do some of these things.
Excellent. Very helpful.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you, everyone.